Tell us a little bit about Greenberg Traurig, if you will, and also as the managing shareholder, just a synopsis of what it's like to run a company of this size here in Miami.
Sure. Well, Greenberg's been around for about 40 years, and we're privileged to be headquartered and founded in Miami, Florida. But we're now an international global law firm. We have 36 offices and about 1,750 attorneys. So we do cross practice. We do litigation, real estate, corporate, immigration, tax, you name it. We are what we call a full-service law firm. We've been a member of the AmLaw 10, which is the top 10 law firms based in the United States, for over a decade now.
Oh, great. So what has been your journey that got you to this point?
I started my career with the firm. I've been with it for over 15 years. Started as a summer associate at law school, and sort of my trajectory has been here ever since. It's funny, I joked years ago that I would stick around as long as I'm having fun, and I'm still having fun.
So you're still here.
I've watched an amazing growth within the firm, and just been a privilege to be a part of it. You were asking what it's like to manage, 200 staff and 150 attorneys. And the reality is we have, with all humility, the best attorneys and the best business staff around. And when you manage incredibly brilliant people like that, you have to have a very special perspective on it. And my perspective is, when I first got the job as managing partner, I both jokingly and seriously told people, I now work for you. Because the key is basically to get these folks who are the best we have to the resources they need, and then step the heck out of their way and let them do what they do best. And that's how I see my role.
Okay, great. Now, you've also been on several boards, both philanthropic and civic among them. Now, outside of the actual working with them in terms of fulfilling those missions, what has that involvement done in terms of your perspective and how you do, how you function here?
Sure. Well, it really informs me as to where Miami and South Florida are going. I'd say, in addition to, as you said, the mission itself, the good work these organizations are doing, the true value it brings to me is acting as a barometer for where Miami's going. So let's say, for instance, part of my involvement tends to be in healthcare. I'm privileged to be the vice chairman of the board for Miami Children's Hospital, and I chair their audit committee, and I used to chair their technology committee. That hospital is doing amazing things at the nexus of technology and healthcare. So telemedicine initiatives, data warehousing, things like that. It allows me to see where healthcare is going and how technology is helping it. Beacon Council, I do a lot of work with there, which is the economic development arm of Miami-Dade County. That lets me see which companies, what are they looking for, what are the concerns in terms of recruiting them to Miami-Dade County. Is it top educational facilities? Is it infrastructure, things like that. So by involving myself in these organizations, it allows me to position Greenberg in a way that we know we're being cutting edge in terms of what the concerns are within Miami-Dade County.
That leads me to the next question, but I want to piggyback on that a little bit because we're going to talk about technology, particularly here in South Florida, sure, for a bit. But your involvement in the Miami Children's Hospital, in the tech committee, if you
Absolutely.
will, what has been your experience in terms of what you see the possibilities are and how it's happening here?
It's a true game changer, and I encourage anyone who has the ability to do so, go visit our campus, our main campus, and see our telehealth facility. What they're doing there is truly transformative, and we've actually had a number of thought leaders throughout the world come by to look at our campus to see some of the best practices we're doing. But in a nutshell, what we're trying to do is Miami Children's Hospital has always had some of the top doctors in the world. A lot of people don't realize this, but we're one of the few hospitals that's ranked in over 10 pediatric subspecialties. So what we're trying to do now is say, how can we take that thought leadership, how can we take those centers of excellence and bring it to the world? Obviously, we've always had folks who, from the Caribbean, as far as Moscow, helicopter, plane in their children when it's something that's very difficult, no other hospital can help them. But our thought process is, in addition to that, millionaire who can do that, how can we bring it to other children? So let's say in Honduras, etc. Now imagine, if you will, not to go too far into it, but imagine you have a doctor in Honduras with an iPad that has a suite of diagnostic equipment that through technology can feed all of that data to our docs in Miami Children's Hospital. So we don't have to fly our docs all the way around the world, which can sometimes be cost prohibitive. They can emulate being in there with that child at that moment. That's transformative. That's what our telehealth initiative is all about. Bringing those centers of excellence using technology to the world, and other parts of the United States for that matter.
And I appreciate that only because oftentimes when we think of technology, we don't really see the focus of its usage in that manner. particularly how it's being projected now. And you know, this is something I was going to ask you later on as well, just in terms of, you know, technology is often seen as the social media space, the apps, because, you know, those are trendy right now, you know. But you've said before that, and I think rightly so, that the technology, particularly here in South Florida, but everywhere else as well, I would assume, that does not operate in an incubator, if you will, because it requires other, you know, services for it to grow. You know, if you have finance, you know, whether it's from an investment or capital management perspective, and in terms of what you do in terms of legal. So with that, you know, in mind, you know, what are the key areas in which Greenberg Traurig is invested in the technology business? Sure.
We actually, I would say, play in almost all of it. So let me first give you how we do it as service providers, as practitioners in law.
Sure.
And then I'll give you the other perspective. In law, we cover the entire gamut. So obviously, the capital raising side, I'd say we're second to none. And we represent both sides. We represent both startups who are raising capital as well as the sources of capital. So we have a very robust practice representing angel investors, venture capitalists, private equity, growth equity firms, et cetera. Which is good because we have that knowledge base. We know what's market, we know what works. We know that when we have a startup executive who's trying to structure his company for his own personal tax reasons, as well as from a corporate perspective, et cetera, we know what, we've seen it a billion times versus that one executive that has it. Frankly, we've seen a billion times more so than that angel investor or that VC has seen it. So that's kind of not thought leadership that we can bring to the table, and we do so on many occasions. But even beyond that, let's take immigration, for instance. A major source of funding these days is what's called EB-5 investing, which is where it's basically an expedited route to a green card. That if you are a foreign national and you invest a certain amount of money in a enterprise, you can get a green card on a more expedited basis. Our immigration practice group is doing tremendous work in that field. So you can see there's various areas where we're working with the startup community to help them out. Then simultaneously, we also pride ourselves on being a connector. Because of our size and our location, our brand resonance, we have access to resources, and folks tend to take our phone calls that we're able to make connections. So for clients, let's say they're looking for sources of capital, they're looking for connections with investment banking firms, venture capital, et cetera, we can make those phone calls. And I have absolutely no problem shooting off a business plan. Obviously, I can't endorse it, I never would.
Right.
But say, here's a business plan you may want to look at. I'm simply introducing you. If it works out, go forth, be successful. But we have that network that we can also deploy.
Oh, that's excellent. Having said that, how do you, from internally, if possible, talk about how you use technology as a company to function more efficiently, as well as, I know you're touching it a little bit as well, in terms of how you be able to better serve your client base?
Sure. Well, you're sitting in one of the examples, this conference room. The camera, unfortunately, won't be able to catch the true technological proficiency of this room, but behind you is a telepresence facility.
Right.
So that basically via cameras and flat screens, we're able to emulate conference rooms. So we've actually have a number of clients who've said, look, I have a conference I have to do in Shanghai. I can't, it's cost prohibitive to fly 10 executives over to Shanghai. We can emulate, at a pretty good extent, the experience of being in that conference room using our telepresence room. Same thing with most of our other technology. This firm is technologically second to none, and we deploy that in multiple ways to help our clients.
Great. It would segue just a little bit. Emerge Americas. It's a massive technology conference that's coming here to South Florida. Tell us a little bit about it and what's Greenberg Traurig's involvement in it, if you will.
Sure. The best way, because people always talk different things about Emerge. To me, the best way to understand the power of Emerge and the intent of Emerge is to analogize to Art Basel. So let's look at what Art Basel did for Miami. Art Basel didn't create the arts in Miami. The arts had been around in Miami way before Basel. The problem is they were all in disparate pieces. So you had folks doing wonderful things in Wynwood, folks doing wonderful things in Design District, folks doing wonderful things at Coconut Grove, and nobody was bringing that all together in one cohesive whole. The brilliance of Basel wasn't in terms of its creation, it was in its consolidation. It was in bringing together all these wonderful players into one whole that then became 10 times more powerful than any of them individually. That's the goal of Emerge Americas. We have a tech renaissance going on in Miami right now, but it's just like with the arts. It's all over the place. You have the folks in Lab Miami and Rocker Labs doing their thing. You have the startup community over in the beach. You have all over the place, the Incubate Miami, Venture Hive. The goal is to bring together all of these players and then highlight what's going on in Miami in the tech community, and simultaneously showing the thought leadership that's there by then bringing in the thought leaders from Latin America, the thought leaders from Israel, the thought leaders from Singapore, bringing in all these thought leaders in technology into one place to work on at once. And what our firm is doing, we drank the Kool-Aid from the beginning. When Manny first outlined his vision to me, I remember it vividly. I was flying to New York with him. I jumped in full force. And so we are one of 4 founding partners, the other 3 being Medina Capital, of course, the Knight Foundation in Miami-Dade County. And we've been there since the beginning. We provide legal services to them. We are general counsel for the Technology Foundation of the Americas, which is the organization through which eMERGE is housed. And we've been there. We've provided a number of introductions. The health vertical, for instance. The healthcare vertical is run by Narendra Kinney, who's the CEO of Miami Children's Hospital. That came about because I introduced him to Manny Medina, and I said, you really need to see the thought leadership that Dr. Kinney's doing. And when Dr. Kinney saw the vision of eMERGE, he says, I want to run with this. And so when you see what the health vertical is going to do, the thought leadership that's going to highlight that's going on throughout the world in terms of telemedicine, you'll be shocked. You'll be blown away.
That's a great point, because just in terms of the Art Basel analogy, because it would seem to me that the conversation as far as technology here in South Florida and Miami in particular has been a closed one, meaning that you know, folks are preaching to the choir, if you will.
Sure.
And there has been some conversation that the community has been somewhat being left out. In fact, I think Diane Sanchez, the CEO of eMERGE America, or the Technology Foundation of the Americas, had said at some point that there needs to be some better marketing of the whole thing to be able to create that much more awareness within the communities. Do you agree with that?
I think we have to look at what we're accomplishing in year 1. This is an inaugural conference. And as with any inaugural conference, the true goal setting has to be on a 3 to 5 year horizon. And if you look at that horizon, the goal was to establish a powerful infrastructure that could then grow organically.
Right.
And the thought process was, if it can grow organically over that next 3 to 5 years, that's going to bring in all the communities. I don't think the intent, I don't think it's possible to encompass everyone on the first shot, but I think the goal is to have a superstructure in place that absolutely can engulf them in year 2, year 3, year 4, and then onward. And that, I think, has been accomplished. I will tell you, though, that as I've traveled, as you mentioned before, I hit a lot of different sectors within Miami. Everywhere I've gone, including even the education vertical. I'll be in a middle school or a high school talking to Superintendent Cavallo. He knows about eMERGE.
Right.
So I think the breadth has been good. Once again, given Miami-Dade County's wonderful diversity and breadth and size, I don't think it was ever possible to hit every sector. But I think if the goal is to create an infrastructure that can grow organically over 3 to 5 years, that itself will encompass everyone.
Okay, I appreciate that. Now, you talked about, you know, the different aspects in terms of how you operate within the tech space. Talk to me a little bit about what you do as far as mentoring.
A lot. It's actually something near and dear to me. I guess in the tech space itself, I mentor a number of startup companies. These are companies where we always pride ourselves at Greenberg on bringing value. So what I won't do is bring in somebody who has sort of a black box idea, who obviously our billable rates might be prohibitive to, and I can't make an arrangement with them. So I'll say, you know what, let me just mentor you. And then as you grow large enough, I can incubate you, so to speak, and then we'll flip you into a formal client relationship. So there's a number of companies that I mentor in that capacity. And my mentorship isn't just simply sitting there and talking about law. It's talking, the beauty of what I've been doing for 15 years is I've seen every structure, every capital raise, and a lot of issues that have faced companies. I always joke that being a corporate lawyer is sort of the next level of an MBA. Because we've seen every case study known to man for a variety of sectors. So literally I will sit there and they'll come to me and say, we have, every issue you can imagine, from channel relationships to HR concerns, you name it, and I just sort of sit there and say, give them the 15 years benefit of my experience.
What has been your experience in terms of your mentoring with respect to what is the biggest need of those mentees? Is this just a lack of experience, business overall, or what has it been? I'd
say connectivity.
Okay.
It's a need, that connectivity, that ability to say, I'm a startup CEO. I know I need capital raising, but I have no idea where the sources are. Where is New World Angels? Where is Andreas Capital? I don't know how this stuff works, but we do. So through Emerge, we can make those connections to you. I don't know how to put together a team of service providers. I don't know how to get a team of web developers or other coders who can help me out.
Right.
I don't even know how to do a web development agreement. These are things that I just know I have an idea I need, but I don't know what they are and how to do it. And I'd say it's that connectivity to the different players that any startup needs to become a successful company that Emerge and that this community needs to give. And I think that's what we give as mentors. Just real quick, I want to give a plug for Endeavor itself.
Certainly.
So you have Endeavor Miami, and Endeavor is an organization that pretty much does exactly what we're talking about. It's existed forever outside the United States. Miami is the first U.S. Site for it, although ironically it's headquartered in New York. And what Endeavor does is they call themselves doing professional mentoring for startups. I call them the ultimate connectivity, because what they do is they bring together all the different pieces of that tech ecosystem that a startup CEO needs to be successful, and they deploy it. So what they do is they interview a ridiculous number of potential startups, and then they'll select their Endeavor candidates. The Endeavor startups get access to that network, that Endeavor network.
Huge.
They get access to that training. They get access to that mentoring. They get assigned mentors. I'm an Endeavor mentor. And so I think one of the organizations that is first and foremost in this whole plan of this ecosystem is going to be the work Endeavor's doing. And they came through a grant from the Knight Foundation. So once again, Knight's been doing a lot of thought leadership there, being partially behind Emerge, behind Endeavor. They're doing their part as well.
The Emerge Americas conference will really give a lot more people, a lot more startups, a lot of people who are interested in technology, more access, knowledge with respect to what's happening even through Endeavor.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, not only will it give them that connectivity because they'll be meeting with the players in there. For instance, I am moderating a panel called Emerging Entrepreneurs. And part of the way we're structuring this panel is almost to tease everyone, to give them an idea as to the nature of the panelists and their experiences, because the goal is in the next hour after that, they'll be bombarded with everyone in the audience who listen to them, and can say, let us learn from your experience. Now you be our mentors. And so it's creating a web. That's really all Emerge does. Is Emerge creates a web. We keep saying ecosystem, but at the end of the day, it's a web. It's a web that does connections all throughout. One person's mentor becomes another person's mentee. Everyone plays their role. And the goal of Emerge is to bring together 5,000 or more people who all have this same hope, this same dream of developing that tech ecosystem, both within Miami but also abroad. This is an issue that's been playing out at the Research Triangle in Austin, Texas, in the Valley, in New York. The goal is to keep this dialogue going, this movement, as Diane Sanchez calls it, to bring everyone together so we realize it's only going to work when we all work together.
Yeah, that's great. Now, I know there's a lot of startups happening here in Miami, but from your experience, not just in terms of startups, what do you see as be more established technology companies, in the broad spectrum of technology speaking? Is there a wide enough range of established technology company here?
I think so. I mean, when you look at the fact that Terramark is here, Terramark Worldwide Inc., which if it wasn't for the blinds we could see, the fact that Citrix is here, you have a number of what I would call granddaddies who can truly mentor and truly be there as a resource. And then it's interesting, it also depends on how you define startup as well. Because we have a number of mezzanine companies as well doing some interesting things. I mean, you interviewed Brian Brackeen with Kairos. Kairos is actually at a point where, which as you know does facial recognition software, they're at a point where I'm not even sure I'd call them a startup anymore. They've done a couple of capital raises, they've got some great contracts under their belt. They're sort of at the next level. You have another company which is actually a client of mine, Affineon Lighting. And you were mentioning that most technology companies are only doing apps and social media. Affineon is a thought leader in LED lighting solutions. I mean, so that what they're doing, they're in Coral Springs, right here in South Florida. I mean, what they're doing is absolutely fascinating. And their revenues are such that I wouldn't call them a startup as well. So you have a number of players, and the beauty is you now have a gradient. You have the very established players, the Citrixes, the Terramarks. Then you have the players who are somewhere along the gradient. Then you have the black box idea folks, what we could traditionally call startups. And that's always been the goal, to have everyone along that spectrum. Brian's already starting to mentor people and starting to evangelize South Florida. I mean, so he's now converting from someone who was mentored, and he still is, and I'm proud to call myself one of his mentors, to somebody who's now mentoring other people. And then that's the whole goal, and that's the whole goal of Endeavor. That we go in there and we support folks, and then they flip it around and they support others. And by creating that ecosystem, by creating that entire web, that gradient, that becomes self-sustaining.
Now, in the long run, outside of just technology itself, how do you see all of this benefiting the wider community? And from your lens as well, do you see that diversity or lack of diversity in tech space here is a function of demographics or not?
Well, to answer your first question, I see it bringing us together. I really do. It goes back to that connectivity issue I mentioned. One of the reasons I've always been huge into tech is I see how it brings the world together. It makes the world much smaller, if you will. One of the reasons why I can remember back in the day when I started my career, doing a deal, people were much more separate. Now with teleconferencing, telepresence, et cetera, we bring the world together. I don't care what country you're in, we can be a little more intimate. Same thing on a microcosmic level, such as Miami or New York or Austin. Right. I see technology as bringing the world together. So that to me, while there's an infinite number of benefits that communities get from technology, to me, enhancing that connectivity and bringing that togetherness, sounds a little corny, but it is, I think that's probably the #1 benefit from it. To answer your question about diversity, I think the key is, once again, mentoring. I mean, there's a lot of folks, Felicia Hatcher comes right to mind, who are doing some amazing things in terms of making sure that communities of color and other diverse communities get included in this movement. And I think it's up to us to also mentor and to show people that it can be done. You know, when I was in college, one of the reasons I do technology is I worked for a computer lab for 4 years doing network diagnostic work, and I also tutored. And one of the things I would tutor people on is I would say, I want you to sit down with a mouse and just play with it. And the reason I did that is I wanted to break down barriers of fear, where people would say, this computer thing just isn't for me. I see it the same way when it comes to diversity communities, that you need those of us like myself, like Felicia, to go out there and evangelize it and say, technology is here. We have to be a part of this. And not only do we have to be a part of this, we can be a part of this, because many of us are already doing it.
That's true. And I would think that you know, the educational component has a lot to do with it as well. Do you see that there's a strong emphasis on, you know, education from a technology standpoint, whether it's in a higher education or, you know, middle school, high school level? I
would like to see more, but I do see some efforts that are encouraging. STEM is being focused on more than ever before. So, my apologies, STEM being science, technology, engineering, math. Being focused on more than ever before. I know that for Superintendent Cavallo, for our own Miami-Dade County Public Schools, it's a huge priority. I'll never be satisfied, because if I had my way, STEM would be part of all of our lives, just because of my own bias, and I see what it does for the world. But I am seeing a focus on it that I think is very powerful. There actually are, and there's a reason I'm pausing, there are efforts underway to do even more amazing things with STEM in our education system. Those are not public yet, so that's why I can't talk about it. But those, coupled with what I've already seen, I am very excited. I would simply say, if I had my way, every college that has a school of education, would have a STEM component ingrained in there. Because the day we have every school teacher feeling comfortable just evangelizing, not teaching necessarily, because not every teacher is going to feel comfortable teaching STEM. But every teacher should evangelize its importance. Certainly. Just like every teacher right now evangelizes literacy. You wouldn't have a teacher saying, I don't feel comfortable, you know, reading. I wouldn't feel comfortable encouraging students to read. Just like you encourage your students to read, you encourage your students to have some kind of proficiency in mathematics. That's the kind of evangelization every school teacher should do for STEM. And I think that's the vector that Superintendent Cavallo and the school board are on. I think that's the vector that the Broward County School Board's on. That's the vector the Department of Education of the state of Florida is on. So we're on the right track. We just need to see more. Yeah, that makes sense. It should become the norm. Certainly when that information becomes public, I'd love to come back and have more conversation about it. Are you planning on being at Greenberg Traurig for the long foreseeable future? There's an interesting question. All right, why don't you ask me if I'm running for office while you're at? Wow, you know what? I'll give you the same answer I said at the very beginning of the interview. I came to Greenberg and I'll be here as long as I'm having fun. I'm still having fun. It is a phenomenal firm. Yes. And right now, I have no intention of leaving. It's an amazing operation, amazing platform. They've allowed me to do unbelievably fascinating things, both in my practice as well as the community. One of the things I'll always cherish about this firm is the latitude it gave me, even before I became part of management, the latitude it gave me to be involved civically. I would be a very unhappy person if all I did was work. I'm very big on work has to bring true value, and the fact that this firm agrees with me and has empowered me to develop my practice the way it has, but also develop in a way that can also have benefits to the whole community. I'll forever be grateful for. So to answer your question, it always gets tough because you never know what comes down the pike.
That is true.
But I have no immediate plans to leave right now. But I think the best answer is I'm going to be around as long as I think I'm bringing value.
I, for one, want to tell you how much I appreciate what you're doing and have done, because I've seen it. I've seen the results of what you've done personally, and I guess by extension what Greenberg Traurig has been doing as well. So thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.